If you're finally ready to take your 4Runner off-road, you need the world's greatest LED off-road pod lights. In this video, I'm going to show you how to mount some A-pillar brackets on this truck. Then I'm going to show you how to put these 4Bangers on those and in the fog lights. Let's get started. Now, first things first, I'm going to tell you why we truly believe that these are the best LED pod lights for your 4Runner. First things first, there's two pod lights that you need to be aware of. The entry level, which Morimoto calls the NCS pod, they use Nichia chips and it's super bright, has the same beam pattern as their higher end model, the HXB or HX Boost. They use an OSRAM chip. Those things are stupid bright. And if you get the beam pattern that is a white wide version, it is the brightest one that we have ever tested here at Headlight Revolution. Now the NCS and the HXB both come in three different beam patterns. They have the wide beam pattern, they have a combo beam pattern, and they have a spotlight beam pattern. All three beam patterns are great, however the one that decimates all is the wide version. 80% or more of our customers buy the white wide version, so that is definitely something to consider, especially if you're gonna mount it in something like a fog light. Now if you wanna see how these pod lights stack up against the rest of the competitors out there, Chris Nelson does an in-depth review where he compares these against Style Dynamics, Rigid Industries, and so on. So if you wanna see how we came to the conclusion of these being the best, be sure to watch that video. Now all of these pod lights and all the driving beam patterns come with either an amber version or a white version. So the higher end OSRAM chips that are used in the HXB 4Bangers, those are a more yellow look. And when you use the NCS 4Bangers, they look a little bit more amber. That's because the NCS uses those Nichia chips. And Nichia chips, they do come in a yellow, whereas the OSRAM chips do not come in a yellow. One thing to note, in all of our testing, the amber versions always came in slightly less than the white versions. That's because the light passing through that yellow lens, it loses a little bit of its luminosity. Since the NCS chip, that entry-level 4Banger, uses a yellow chip passing through the yellow lens, it doesn't quite lose as much lumens. So that is something to consider. Now, as far as street legalities go, that NCS chip, if you do mount it at a -3° aim, it does become compliant with the latest SAE F3 regulations. This is also true for the HXB in white or yellow. Now, what about the reliability? With all of the testing that we have done so far, we have not had any issues. They have an IP69K rating, which means they're totally waterproof. Also, they have a limited lifetime warranty, so they've got to be pretty good. As far as dimming down goes, when you guys are driving at over 4.5 miles an hour, you actually don't lose as much loss of light as you will see in some of our testing or in our other videos. So be sure to note that they don't actually lose but 8% of the brightness when you're driving over 4.5 miles per hour. The last thing to note about these 4Bangers real quick is that they have about a 30% smaller footprint than that of all of the competitors out there. So if you're mounting them in, say, one of the custom brackets on the front bumper in any of your vehicles, they're gonna fit so much better, like an OEM plus look. Now, specifically, the install I'm going to be doing today is a 2010 to 2013 4Runner. However, these 4Runner brackets that they have from Morimoto fit a variety of different vehicles. So check the description and the link below. Let's get started on the A-pillar brackets. First thing I'm going to do is pop the hood. All right, so with the hood pop, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to run the relay harness. So we got a relay kit here. This comes in the kit when you order it from Headlight Revolution, the A-pillar kit. Now, what is in this is a relay. This relay needs to be mounted vertically. We're gonna show you how to do that in just a second. Do not put it like this, then you'll get water intrusion. That's the last thing you want. Also, we've got a positive battery terminal we gotta connect and a negative battery terminal we gotta connect. Then we've got two Deutsch connectors. We got light 1 and light 2. These will be ran to each 4Banger on each side of your truck. We also have a Morimoto switch that we're going to route through the firewall and into the cab of the vehicle. And lastly, we've got an extension harness. I'll show you how to do this in just a second. There's also another wire. Instead of running this switch, there's a wire that you can connect that does come in the kit. We're not going to use it in this case. That's a wire that can connect directly to upfitter switches or some kind of other switch that you may have purchased separately. Now follow me over to the driver's side. We're going to mount the relay first. Now feel free to just drape this over the engine bay. We can take care of that later. We're going to focus on the relay first. Now there is a hole already on this relay, as you can see here. I drilled it out a little bit because I found this bolt that's going to work perfectly with mounting. However, you could mount it any way you want to. You can find a 10mm bolt, you can find some zip ties. As long as it's mounted vertically, that's all that matters. So I'm going to put it right here, right next to the battery. I'm going to put the bolt through, mount it right here. Make sure it's not cross-threaded and tighten it down. This will be out of the way and give you plenty of room to connect to the battery. Now I get that we're right next to the battery, but I would not suggest connecting to the battery terminals right yet. We don't want any live wires getting passed through the firewall. So what I'm going to actually do is take the extension harness and attach it to light 2. This is just going to give you enough length to get over to the passenger side. It's a nice waterproof connection, makes things real simple. Now I'm going to run this to the other side real quick. Just going to get this close to where your A-pillar bracket will be. We can tidy up all the wiring later. I'm going to do the exact same thing for light 1. Just kind of mock it up where the A-pillar bracket will be. There we are. So your wiring is prepped and situated where it needs to be. Now go ahead and grab your driver's side A-pillar bracket. It's going to be mocked up kind of like this. Let me show you really quick. So it's going to sit like this. So we are going to have to remove these bolts. They're 12mm bolts and they're holding on your hood. But first, I'm going to put these little plastic clips that come in your kit into here. This is just going to hold the wiring nicely next to the A-pillar bracket itself. So to do that, this little plastic clip, just push it in from the front side. First one will go like that, nice and easy. Next one's going to go right here. Put it from the front side. Now here's where I would suggest grabbing a friend to help you hold the hood, because you do have to remove these 12mm bolts all the way. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my 12mm wrench. Let's get started. All right, I'm going to put the bracket on really quick, and the bracket's going to go right below it. Just going to hand tighten it for now. I definitely recommend having a friend hold it for you so you don't cross-thread it. All right, tighten them down. Now we're going to go ahead and do the exact same thing on the other side. Passenger side complete. We're going to go ahead now and shut the hood. Make sure you're not closing it on any wiring. And let's head on over back to the driver's side. So good on Morimoto. First off, they have all of the hardware you need to mount the 4Bangers to the A-pillar brackets. They even have a universal U-bracket right here to mount the 4Bangers on the A-pillar brackets. So I'm going to mount this U-bracket first. All right, now grab the bolt and run it down. Just like that, it'll lock in. Now go ahead and take your washer and that 17mm nut and put it below. All right, we don't have to go super tight with this yet because we want to adjust them later. I'm gonna tighten it down just enough so it's not annoying to work with. All right, now we get to mount the 4Banger. In this case, we did a spot version in amber. He did the HXB, which is the highest version of 4Bangers out there, spot beam pattern. I'll show you real quick what it looks like outside. It's the amber version. This is what the owner of this 4Runner wanted, and so that's what we're gonna do. Also, a spot version works really well on the A-pillars themselves. I wouldn't necessarily recommend this in the fog lights. Be sure to check out the video where Chris goes over all of the different beam patterns to tell you which one's best for your vehicle. Now grab your 4Banger, mount it just like this, and put those T30 bolts on each side. Again, no need to tighten these down too tight because I want to adjust them when I get outside. Quick side note, I know a lot of people use these 4Bangers as ditch lights themselves. However, this spot beam pattern is generally supposed to be mounted right into the middle. They're supposed to cross over each other so you can get that beautiful downrange light output. That's like a supplemental high beam in a way. Now go ahead and plug the 4Banger in and do the exact same thing on the other side. We'll tidy up all this wiring later. Four bangers are mounted. Go ahead and open that hood back up now. And we're gonna make our way to the switch. Remember, this is one of the last remaining connections besides the positive or negative battery terminal. This switch, Morimoto thankfully thought ahead. Running this into the cab would be a pain in the butt if they didn't have this waterproof connector you can actually remove and only have to put this much through the firewall instead of the entire switch itself. Also, remember, if you do disconnect this switch, you can install this little wire here that I mentioned earlier. This is the one that you can connect to an upfitter switch if that's what you had, or if you had your own switch you wanted to connect it to, it's got a bare wire here. It makes it super easy to connect to whatever it is you want to connect to when turning on your 4Bangers. However, I like the Morimoto switch, so this is what I'm going to be installing on the inside of the cab. What I'm going to do first is pass this wire now through the firewall. Now there's a million ways to pass a wire through a firewall. What I generally did, or at least back in the day, was I would take a knife and actually cut right next to all this main wiring here, cut a little slit in that rubber grommet, and then I would just try to pass this through there. I could use a wire fish, that'll usually help you when you're pulling it through. Or Morimoto also has this grommet here. Now this grommet would allow you to drill a hole right down here in the firewall and then still maintain that waterproof connection. Either way is up to you. I'm gonna go ahead and do that, and then I'm gonna pass it through the cap here and meet you on the other side. All right, now once you've passed it through your firewall, which was no small task, I get it, it'll come out to about here. Now you can put the Morimoto switch wherever you'd like in this vehicle. If you want to put it in some of these blank spots over here where the other switches are, you sure can do that. If you want to put it over here, right next to all the other switches, that's a good option too. Whatever you do, just make sure that you don't have something metal behind it or something that moves when you have that, because you do have a depth of about this much with the switch. The last thing you want to do is drill a hole with a step bit in your plastic, only for the switch not to fit there. So where I'm going to do it is right here. That's where it's at in my truck, and this is where I would recommend you doing it if you want the Morimoto switch. It's super easy. What I'm gonna do is actually pry this plastic down to give you an idea of it. You can work your way around. You might need a pry tool to get that off. It wasn't too hard for me. So right here, good option because you don't have anything in the way. So what we're gonna do is drill a hole now into this plastic piece. As I pull this down, this is where I'm gonna drill the hole. I'm gonna use a step bit. A step bit looks like this. I'm gonna use the step bit so I only drill a 3/4 inch hole. You don't want anything bigger, the switch is just gonna fall right through it. So I'm gonna drill the hole starting right here, about 3/4 inch. That's all you need. So this wire will then get routed up and then through the hole just like this. Now you can connect your switch. This is the switch that you previously removed. There is a locking collar that we're going to remove on it before we connect these two wires. It's right here. Once this locking ring is off, we're going to sandwich the plastic between the lock washer and this switch right here. So take this switch, don't connect it yet, we're going to put it through this hole that we just had there. So you're going to have the switch, the plastic piece, and then put your washer on the other side. So it'll look something like this. This piece of plastic here will be right in the middle of this and this. And you're gonna tighten it down. This will keep your switch in place. So tighten it down, it'll be about there. Now from the back side here, you can plug in this waterproof connector that you put through the firewall. So route it up and connect it from there and tighten it all the way down. Now make sure that this is tight. Once this is good to go, all we have is 2 more connections. We gotta do the positive and negative battery terminals. Let's do that right now. Go ahead, go to the negative one first. In this case, it's a 12 mil. Remove the bolt. Grab your negative wire connection and put that nut back over it and tighten her down. Now do the same thing for the positive side. Go ahead and remove this 12mm nut. Careful not to drop it into the abyss. Grab that positive wire, set it down, tighten that nut back over it. All right, now the 4-bangers are complete. Go ahead and tidy up all of this wiring now, and then align those 4-bangers on the A-pillar brackets once you get that done. Make sure you test it by pushing that button. When you're good to go, we can now move to the fog lights. Let's go ahead and build the brackets for those right now. Now I gotta admit the fog lights are so much easier to install than the A-pillar brackets, so don't worry, it's easy, let's get to it. This right here is what we're gonna be building. It's the 4-banger put into the Morimoto bracket itself. The 2 screws we're gonna be removing are the 2 bottom screws right here. It's a T10, go ahead and remove those. We're gonna be replacing them with the 2 longer screws that came in the kit. Now I gotta say, if you're watching this video and thinking you have a better tool than we have, definitely send it and we will definitely use it in our next video. Screws removed, we're going to be going ahead and installing this metal bracket now on the bottom side. It only goes on one way. Now we're going to be replacing these 2 screws with the longer screws like this that come in the kit. They got a little Loctite on them. Now you can go ahead and sandwich the 2 together. Sandwich the plastic bracket that came in your kit and the 4-banger. We're going to be coming in from the back side and putting in the bolts. There's 3 bolts that you see here in the kit. Go ahead and put 2 in the side. And you'll be tightening that down with the T30 Torx Bit as well. Same thing on the other side. And the one on the bottom side, don't forget that one as well. Don't tighten this one down all the way because we're going to use this to adjust the 4Banger once we get into the fog lights. Now all you got left is this connection right here. It's got a Deutsch connector, and then this side connects to your factory wiring from your fog lights. So it's seriously plug and play from here. Now go ahead and plug in that waterproof Deutsch connector. Make sure you hear it click. Now that this bracket's built, build out your other fog light, and then let's go over there to the fog light area on the truck. I'm going to start with the driver's side, so I'm going to turn the wheel all the way to the left. It's going to make it much easier when I'm installing. When you're on the passenger side, turn your wheel all the way to the right. All right, so your wheel is turned. Now let me show you the tools you need. You are going to need a 10mm socket, just like that. You're going to need a pry tool if it's a little bit more difficult for you to remove this fender liner. You may not need this, but it's good to have. Also, you're going to need a Phillips screwdriver. Those are all the tools you need to remove the original fog lights. Now, in this case, we do have the Morimoto XB fog lights installed. He wanted to upgrade to the 4Bangers, so that's what we're doing. I can assure you, though, that taking these out is the exact same way that you would with your stock fog lights. So, first thing we're going to do is remove these 3 10mm bolts on the inner fender liner. There is one on the bottom we're going to get to as well. We're going to remove those and then pull back the fender liner so we can see what we're working with. All right, now let's get dirty. Once you get under here, you'll notice this is the bolt you need to remove. Now we can pull back the fender liner. Now this is what I was saying, you might want the pry tool. This will help you pull it back. If you don't need it, that's just fine. You can pull it way back and you can see what you're working with. When you look in there, you'll notice that there's only one Phillips screw holding this in. Go ahead and take that screwdriver and remove it. Screw removed. Now you can go ahead and pull this free. Now obviously this is connected by a wire here, so go ahead and push this little plastic tab and pull it free. And there you are. Now just like your stock fog lights, these 4Banger brackets also have the same thing. They have the 2 brackets here, so what you're going to do is push them in, and then you're going to put the screw right here. Line up those grooves and push it in. And you can go ahead and put that one Phillips screw back in. And remember that little screw on the bottom of the bracket? If you loosen that up a bit, you can adjust the vertical aim. Don't forget to plug it back in. If you want to zip tie all this wiring, you sure can. Now go ahead and put your fender well back in after you align these properly, and you're good to go. Now the coolest part about the install that you just did in the fog light area is if you chose the wide version, the HXB or the NCS being that entry-level pod, they are now SAE compliant. That's a huge deal. You can have these on and be street legal doing it. Guys, you did the 8-pillar brackets, you've done the fog light install, so why stop there? We have tons of different products and installs and tutorials on how to install these lights on your 4Runner, so be sure to check that out. Also, go to headlightrevolution.com, type in your year, make, and model to see everything there.